and not going to go too wild with this, but I just want to add a few select regions of well, not super dark, but very dark shadow. Hi everyone, I'm Mike. I'm an artist based in the UK. I paint animals, people, landscapes and surreal scenes, among other things, and I sell my paintings and prints all over the world. So today I'm going to be using this paint-on multi-techniques or mixed media paper. This is A3 in size and it's slightly textured paper. I've also got my little Derwent watercolor travel set. Some quite strong colours in this actually, very vibrant, so that's really good. And then I've got my water brushes. So water brushes have a hollow handle, so you can store water in there, and then you press the button here, and that allows you to control the flow of water to the bristles. And then in addition, I've got my, where have they gone? And I've got my Unipin marker set. So these are just water resistant fine liners with a range of nib sizes and water and fade proof pigment ink. So in this video I'm going to be doing a painting of a cow in what I hope is a reasonably original style. It's funny where inspiration can come from, because quite a few months ago on the channel I did a little video where I painted I drew a horse with a Sharpie, and then I just did vertical stripes as the background. And following on from that, I think I may have done another painting in that video, I can't quite remember, but certainly following on from that, I did a painting, line and wash, of a Riggett Galloway calf. And again, what I did is I turned the background colours on their side. Oh no, I remember now. So what I did was, so the little sketch of the horse inspired me to do a black cattle watercolour painting with the landscape turned on its side. But then the stripes idea cropped up again with the Riggett Galloway calf painting, the line and wash, where I took the colours of the landscape, turned them on their side, and then, so for example, the sky, I believe, was on the right hand side. Let me just find that painting. Oh no, the sky was actually on the left, and then the greens and the yellows of the landscape were on the right. Anyway, I was down at the beach in Cornwall a while ago and just had some fun. I didn't film these, but I just had some fun doing some plein air sketching, line and wash with watercolor. So here's the first one, fairly simple. And these aren't all great by any means, but sometimes when you're at the beach, you come up with different ideas, and sometimes the best ideas flow when you don't try too hard, I think. So for example, here, you can see I've just silhouetted this guy with his surfboard and the surfers, and there's no paint here at all, just painted in the shape of the wave and a bit of dry brush. And then I had a bit of fun doing something similar, but I added one of my favourite animals, the Belty, to this little image. And you can see I'm starting more and more to just depict the water as a series of coloured stripes, because there are a multitude of colours in the water down at Cornwall. And I was really starting to enjoy the contrast between the very simplistic treatment of the water and then the more finished treatment of the animal. And then I did something similar, or a similar approach, with some people walking along the beach, and I've decided to put them in suits just for a bit of fun. You can see I've barely painted the wave here, but I personally feel it makes for quite a nice, interesting background, and this one's possibly one of my favourites, I don't know. But I mean, there's really almost nothing there, but if you're familiar with the beach, this particular beach in Cornwall, I think somebody, when you see the surfer, you would hopefully know this was the water. So that's the first part of the inspiration, is having a striped background. No, sorry, that's the second part, isn't it? So the first part is taking the stripes and then turning them on their side. And then my plan is to take that side stripe idea, but this time I'm going to use a reference photo very kindly provided by Lorraine. Thank you very much, Lorraine, if you're watching. So I think this cow was from Spain. I'll correct that on screen if I don't remember. So Lorraine was on her holidays, traveling away, and very kindly took the time to take some reference photos for me of several animals. They're fantastic photos, all the ones she sent me, including this one of a cow against a beautiful Spanish landscape, distant mountains, trees in the background, and this wonderful cast shadow across the body of the animal. So I thought, well, hang on, I can combine my vertical stripes background idea, but this time, instead of mimicking the colors in the landscape in the reference, I'm going to put some ocean colors in the background and then do the line and wash drawing in a similar way to the way I did the Rigget Galloway cow. Although I planned to use the colors of the ocean as the background, when I actually came to do the painting, it was like a really beautiful sunny day, and I just decided to sit out in the garden, and I looked at the reference again and I thought, actually, I like the colors of the background in the reference so much, I'm just going to use those as the inspiration for the stripes. So I've turned the reference photo on its side for you to so you can kind of see how I'm thinking, basically. So on the far right hand of the rotated image, the skies are darker blue than it is as it heads towards the horizon. So for that reason, I'm using my flat water brush here to apply a blue stripe. Oh, hang on, we've got a little bit of an interruption here. So this is my creative consultant. He likes to pop into the studio from time to time. He's decided to supervise this project, apparently, but there we go. So now as we move down towards the horizon, so from right to left in my background, that's going to be a lighter blue. And as I was saying, I'm using the flat water brush. And one of the other things I'm doing here is I've deliberately chosen to leave just a little line of white unpainted in between each stripe. Primarily, I think I did that just because I don't want kind of a mixing of the colours. I want quite distinct stripes. I don't want to mix on the board. It's a pretty hot day today. So the creative consultant has decided to find some shade there. But now just mixing up the next colour. So this is going to represent the distant mountains. And the good thing about this inktense travel set is that it's so small and portable. As you can see, I can just rest it on the paper. It's really good for working outdoors, actually. And comboing it with the water brush makes for a really efficient way to work. So I've mixed up a purple now. So that's going to be the colour representing the mountain range. Keeping things fairly watery and loose. Any textures that occur, I'm very happy for that. Any bits of dry brush, that's fine as well. And then if you look at the reference just in front of the cow's chest, so in the rotated reference, it's just above the cow's chest and to the right of the green grass in the foreground, you can see there's kind of an orangey bush there. It's orangey brown, but that's what I'm mixing up now. So I'm using a combination of yellow ochre here and a little bit of the red. I think that's cadmium red in the palette. And so it's kind of an earthy orange I've mixed up here. And we're just going to pop in the penultimate stripe. So the final stripe, this, as you would expect, is going to be green. Okay, well now coming in with some of the orange on the palette to start to fill in, block in the animal. So the initial drawing was done with my Unipin marker that I showed you earlier in the video. Now, the water brush is great, especially as mentioned, when I'm working outside, but it does have its limitations. It's not as good. It's not quite as versatile as having just a big pot of water and a nice big mop brush for laying down washes. So for the kind of illustrative style that I'm working in today, it's perfect. It's fine. But you can't really compete with the variety of washes and marks that you can put down in the sort of more traditional watercolor way, because there's just not enough water in the handle so you could bring a little water reservoir, I guess, and kind of use that to create a nice dilute wash on the palette and then just pick up some of that paint. But the bristles on the water brush tend not to hold quite as much water, I find, as a really nice bespoke mop brush. But as you can see, what I've been doing is basically just blocking in the main areas of the cow with orange, leaving a few bits uncoated to pick out some highlights. And now we need a shadow color. So I'm going with purple, a purplish. It's probably a little bit of burnt umber. Yeah, it was burnt umber mixed with the purple that's in the palette. And I'm using that to create a colourful but somewhat subdued cast shadow colour. So this is the colour I'm going to use not only on the side of the head here, but also for the cast shadow that goes across the body. And you can see how different that colour looks when placed on the unpainted paper, where I've put some on the face, compared to how I'm putting it down on top of the orange. So that's something to always keep in mind with painting in general, actually, but especially watercolour. If you're putting one colour layered over another, that's going to look very different depending on what the underlying colour is. Hadn't really drawn the tail in properly at all, so a little bit of a hint at that with the darker colour there. Just adding a little bit of warmth with a more of a reddish glaze now to some of the orange. And here I'm just overlaying that reddish glaze, putting it on top of both the shadow area and the orangey area as well, just to kind of soften a little bit the transition from dark to light. Now, as I put some down here on the chest and the leg of the animal, and along the back as well, as the paint's running out, I'm kind of making use of the little frayed marks that I get from the flat brush. So that sort of hints at a little bit of hairiness, a little bit of fluffiness on the surface of the animal. And in these hot conditions, the paint is drying almost immediately. So that keeps things super simple to deal with, when working in an illustrative style like this. Right, back to a green, but a little bit of a warmer and lighter green than before. And I just want to hint at a bit of land that the animal's standing on. So I don't want to hide the background stripes completely, but it's just giving the cow a surface to perch itself on. so that it's not just floating in space. Now I can't be too precise with this fairly chunky flat brush, but I can use the corner of it to make surprisingly small marks. And by varying the angle of the brush and whether I squish it hard or soft against the paper, that gives you a further variation in the mark making as well. Okay, so I've moved indoors now, and the watercolor is completely dry. And this inktense watercolor, I think, actually dries waterproof as well. So that's just a good bit of info to know. Depending on how you work, that could be an advantage or a disadvantage. For me, in this particular case, that's an advantage, I think. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to come in with my 0.2 mil nib Unipin fine marker and have some fun adding some character to the line work and some more detail. So for example, that little blob of shadow there, I just made use of the outline of that and followed that to put in a lock of hair. And rather than try and draw every hair, often it's good to just draw a little negative space and then draw the outline of 2 or 3 locks of hair around that. And that's quite an efficient way to depict something like that. And I don't know how well you can see on camera, but there's like a little area there that purely by chance didn't get covered by paint. So I'm actually going to steal a little bit of that to extend the horn up there. But that said, if I feel the need to extend the line a bit further into that purpley background, then I'm going to do it. So there aren't really any boundaries or rules in terms of where the colour goes as far as I'm concerned. I'll make use of the bits I like and then ignore the boundaries if I feel that will give a better result. I'm not going to colour in the eye just yet. Haven't quite decided how to deal with that. I might make them a dark blue. That's often a favourite eye colour for me. So far fairly happy with the way the head's working out in terms of the line work. Just going to add a few fun wispy bits of hair on the outline of the chest here. I mean, I've got a few there already from the brush work. Now, I'm not including the bell, so for that reason I'm not going to include that cast shadow there. But let's move up to the back next. Now, my watercolor hasn't really captured the shadow correctly here, so I'm going to just do my own thing. There. This bit of shadow is not too bad. I mean, it's not quite the right shape, but it's not too bad. Not too bad for this style of kind of drawing and painting. I'm not really following reality too carefully. Now, when it comes to the grass, it's rare that any deliberate line work I do is going to be as good as the random shapes that the brush and the watercolor have made on their own. So generally speaking, I kind of take advantage of those haphazard shapes that occur and just trace them with the ink marker. So back up to the animal. I'm just going to put in a few little characterful marks crossing the boundary between the painted and unpainted region there. And now a few little curved contours. Again, just crossing those naturally created boundaries in colour and tone. I think it just adds to the image to break those up a little bit. Now I've just realised I don't know whether it was deliberate or not. How can I put it? I never make a mistake deliberately, but I made it what appears to be a mistake there. I can't remember if I was drawing the foot or just forgot to draw the bottom of the leg. So either way, there needs to be a bit more of the leg there. So we'll just draw that in. Now that's gone, well, as you can see, quite fully into the blue background. But I actually don't mind that. I think it kind of looks like it's being immersed in shadow somewhat. So that's all fine. put rather less line work around the grass here. So for the moment, I don't think I want to do too much more to the animal. Just going to have a quick look at the drawing that I did previously of the Riggett Galloway calf, because I want to keep the style pretty much the same. So with that in mind, what I'd like, so in terms of the animal, I'm not going to do too much more to that just yet. I quite like at the moment the fact I've outlined this bit of the grass quite firmly and then just let it kind of fade away here. Looking back at the Riggett Galloway painting I did with a striped background, different stripes to this one, what I did was I didn't actually put any lines down to separate the stripes, but I just did a light pen landscape in the background. So again, inspired by the reference. I'm not going to try and replicate that exactly, but just want to add, you know, a hint of some bushes and landscape, distant hills, mountains perhaps, and some trees, but without, you know, being too heavy-handed about it. One of the things I notice, you know, when I'm painting and drawing away, is once in a while I kind of notice, oh geez, I really am holding this pen way tighter than I need to. You know, you really don't need very much pressure on the pen in order to get done what you want to do. But when you're concentrating, very easy to carry far too much tension in the arm or the body. A good way to counter that is just to hold the pen between fingertip and thumb. Okay, so now I'm going to come in, that was a 0.2 mil nib, and now I'm going to come in with the 0.3. And not going to go too wild with this, but I just want to add a few select regions of well, not super dark, but very dark shadow here and there, and a few thicker lines. The idea being just to distinguish, or make the animal stand out from the background a little bit more. But on the whole, I'm fairly happy so far with the overall look of the image. I don't know, there's something about these vertical stripes I quite like. It's so opposite to the conventional horizontal patterns of tone and colour that we get in the landscape, generally speaking. And working my way around the drawing, I'm kind of looking at the reference at the same time. And I'm looking at what the reference is telling me. So, for example, it's quite a strong shadow here on this part of the foot. But then I'm looking at my drawing as a whole and thinking, well, if I make that super dark, is it going to add to my drawing? And in this particular case, I feel not particularly. So for that reason, I just kind of leave things as they are if I think it's working fairly well. So here, that was a little bit of an error in the original drawing, I think, but that works quite well. Where I've got bits of broken line, I quite like that it's not a continuous line. I don't want the animal to look like it's been cut out and pasted onto the background. So I think I will use the pen to do the eyes, just zooming in on the image. So I'm going to be careful to leave a little bit of that purple showing. So often when the light's coming in this way, for example, the highlight on the eye exposed to the direct light will be really quite bright. But the eye that's in shadow, that will still have a highlight, but it'll typically be very subdued. So for that reason, leaving a little bit of that purple showing should be enough of a highlight to, be kind of realistic within this rather bizarre world I'm creating. Whereas in contrast, the highlight there on the left, I'm leaving that as pure white. So at the moment, I'm not sure I want to do any more to this. I'm just going to leave it as it is for now, and then I'll come back and have another look in a day or two. So here's a look at the finished painting. On the whole, I'm pretty happy with this one. I think the treatment of the background is pretty original and in keeping with the the previous Rigget Galloway calf that I did. Got a little smudge of blue there in the purple, but I actually don't mind that at all. I think the grass works quite well, and like before for the Rigget Galloway, I just included a little outline of a landscape in the background, and then the cow itself, a little bit of character in the face and a sense of light, bright light, due to this cast shadow. So here's a quick close-up, or a few close-ups of the work, so you can see the brush work and the line work and so on. And then obviously that was a fairly quick study or painting, illustration, whatever you want to call it. But my plan is to do a more fully worked up acrylic painting in a more conventional style, a more conventional representation of the scene, and on a larger scale at some point. So I've already started kind of experimenting with the layout of that. So in this one, I've got the cow kind of coming in from the right, and we can't even see the whole part of the body. And then the other one I was thinking of was this sort of setup where it's fully central, and I've included some of the trees, that tree that I included previously, some elements of the grass already, and started to include some of the mountains and some of the twisting trees as well. Not quite sure which one I'm going to go for or whether I'll do either of these, but I will at some point definitely use that reference for a more worked up painting, because I like the image of this particular cow a lot, and as I said, the cast shadow. So that'll be popping up on the channel in a few weeks, I expect. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching, and hope to see you next time.